The second season of Castlevania Nocturne has just been released, and after waiting well over a year for this next installment, I think it's safe to say that it definitely delivered. Focusing on Erzebet as she looked to bring on an eternal darkness whilst holding on to the soul of Sekhmet, the goddess of war and healing. Richter Belmont, Annette, Alucard, and Maria had an uphill battle on their hands in order to prevent the eternal night from occurring. So with that, let's jump into the show and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Castlevania Nocturne Season 2 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Ending Explained. This entire season was essentially about the hunt for the mummified corpse of Sekhmet, an Egyptian goddess that once walked the earth. Erzebet wanted the corpse because once she had the Dakar, then it would mean that she would be powerful enough to bring on the eclipse that would last forever, meaning she'd be able to be the vampire messiah and god that had everybody kneeling before her, something that she desired, and the vampires would also be able to roam freely because it would be darkness forever. During the opening of episodes 2 to 5, we saw Drolta over the years as she looked for the right vessel in order to carry the soul of Sekhmet. However, people that weren't strong enough were burning before her. It was only once in 1614 CE where she heard of Countess Erzebet Bathory and the evil nature that she had, where she believed she'd be cruel enough and powerful enough to become a god, something that we obviously saw taking place. Once the eternal darkness was brought upon the city of Paris after Erzebet consumed the heart of the corpse, the battle commenced. Within this battle, we had Olrox, Mizrak, Maria, Juste, Alucard, and Richter Belmont fighting against her, along with Annette. But first, let's start by talking about Maria. We saw Maria spending a lot of this season conflicted about how to feel. She didn't know whether she was going to use her powers for good or for evil, and she was even on the cusp of getting her mother to turn her into a vampire. But with the guidance of Juste, she realized that evil wasn't the way to be. This was after she burned her father to ashes, by the way. She was conflicted because she blamed Abbot for what happened and the fact that her mother was now a vampire, hence why she was prepared to become one. It was only during the closing moments of the season where the powers that she had were no longer filled with darkness, and the light within them most definitely symbolized the side that she was now on. Maria actually decided to stay in Paris with Alucard and Juste in order to protect the city that she felt the most connected to and from the evil that could still plague it. Whether that be the true evil, such as the vampires, or the political evil that the citizens were fighting against. She said how all of the people that fought alongside the vampires deserved to die, which showed that she was now back on the side that she was originally on with no doubt in her mind. She found herself and who she truly wanted to be. There was a moment where we saw Terra looking on at the person facing the guillotine, and death itself was standing behind her. So I wonder if that was alluding to the fact that even though she was supposed to be going off and finding herself, death could soon be awaiting her, and there might be more trouble for the mother and daughter. Olrox was a character that I thought had an interesting arc in this season. It always felt like he was going to betray Erzebet, and once he got branded by Drolta, that cemented his place. He wanted to be with Mizrak, and once he saw that he was wounded, he went to be by his side, which ultimately prevented the final blow being given to Drolta, something which meant that that was why she ended up becoming Sekhmet right at the end. There was a moment where as Richter was fighting against Drolta, he appeared behind him and assisted in the fight, something which I thought was quite a beautiful moment. Olrox was there during the first moments of Castlevania Nocturne when he killed Richter's mother, but in this instance, he was saving her son. He's definitely a complex character, and despite being on the side of evil, he does have some kind of heart within him. In order to save Mizrak, he actually turned him into a vampire, something which I feel Mizrak might resent him for in the long run, but for now, he made him avoid the devil that was after him. With regards to Richter, he had a deep sense of love for Annette in this season, and all the time that he was fighting Erzebet during the darkness, he was fighting for her. This was why we saw such a strong side to the character, the strongest side that we'd ever seen. It was because he now had something to fight for in the present day, rather than fighting whilst filled with revenge. This season didn't really feel like Richter's season, it was more so about Annette and the power that she held. However, it didn't take anything away from his involvement. After all, he was the person that delivered the final blow to Drolta and caused her to be killed and ended for good, slashing her completely in half. Richter and Annette bonded over the loss that they both suffered and the similarities that they had. Him being there for her and saying that he'd always be by her side no matter what was the very thing that ultimately allowed Annette to make it back from the spirit world once Sekhmet had united all of the three souls and brought balance back. Plus, they were both going off to Saint-Domingue right at the end. Annette spent most of this season witnessing spirits amongst the walking world and being uncertain of what they wanted. She didn't know if they were evil spirits or if they were there to assist her. Well, it actually turned out that because a part of everybody is within the spirit world, it meant that there was a third spirit of Sekhmet that was within that world, which meant that she had to go in there in order to find it and utilize it to be able to defeat Erzebet. However, once she got there, she got trapped because Sekhmet wanted to fight herself. We saw throughout the show that vessels that weren't worthy would be burned when the body would get taken over, and there was the threat that it could happen to her, and it almost did. But with Richter's words and presence calling her back, she gathered the strength to be able to return. Going past Ogun, who showed her the warrior that she was, and also past her mother, the very person that she missed but sought comfort in knowing that she was always there with her. I haven't touched on Drolta and Erzebet that much, but I'll do that in the next section. Why Drolta was such an interesting character. I found Drolta to be such an interesting character because she was deeply complex. Her evil nature was born out of witnessing the suffering of those that she cared for and being a victim of the very violence that she once disagreed with. She was the person that essentially made Erzebet the vampire messiah and made her believe that she was going to be a god. However, she ultimately betrayed Erzebet and killed her when she deemed her to be worthless, even though Erzebet was the very person who got Abbot to bring her back from the dead. I did wonder why it was that she didn't just become Sekhmet herself and wanted a different vessel, because it did seem as though she would have been powerful enough to hold onto the souls, and we saw that she was able to in the final episode of the season. Drolta was an intimidating character that lived in the shadow of somebody that loved her, and when the time came she betrayed her and killed her in order to hold all of the power. She ultimately became the very thing that she was once fearful of and was running away from in 1199 CE. What was the Black Figure? The Black Figure that we saw appearing in this season of the show was referred to as Old Man Coyote by Olrox when it approached him. This haunting figure that looked like it was born in a nightmare would always have a creepy smile on its face as it dragged the souls of the very people that had just died down to hell with it. I believe this figure is a visual representation of death and almost like the Grim Reaper, retrieving the souls of the soon-to-be departed and taking them down to hell with it. That's why it was always there in the moments before people died and why they would always walk towards it. The fact that it was standing right behind Terra in the closing moments of the season is something which definitely paints a bleak picture for the next season of the show, as it seems to have an interest in the mother which was now perceived to be a villain and a target by the Parisian people. I hope we get to learn more and see more of Old Man Coyote in the next season because they were so well designed and uncomfortable to look at. No words needed to be spoken by this figure to get across the sinister nature that it had. My review of Season 2. I would say that I actually preferred Season 2 of the show to the first. I thought the story felt like it had such a straightforward structure to follow and it made it all the more digestible and immersive. The use of the flashbacks in seeing how Erzebet came to be the person that she was and how Drolta had such hatred within her was interesting to see, and it was definitely needed. I thought the visuals in this season were just remarkable. The fight scenes were on such a large scale and they were just epic to watch. I felt transported into that world and the mix of art styles at points provided a fresh experience when watching it. I'd also say I really liked the animation style when Annette was traveling back from the spirit world. The vortex looked incredible. When it comes to the performances of the characters, I don't think I can fault them really. Erzebet was menacing and the way she looked and sounded was just peak villain. Plus, Richter Belmont on the other side was just your stereotypical hero and kind-hearted individual. I would say my favourite characters in the show were Alucard just purely for his wisdom and humour that would end up coming along with that, and also Juste. I just felt like their voices were perfect for the characters and there was almost like an element of comfort there when listening to them. With regards to the pacing of this season, I thought it was spot on. Having 30-minute episodes is the right amount because it didn't drag at any point and each episode genuinely just got right to the point. There was barely any fluff and every second mattered, so I'd rather have that than 45-minute episodes where I end up drifting in and out because it's not all vital to the story. One thing that I would say was a bit of a shame was that we didn't get to spend that much time with Edouard. I like the fact that he fought for the side of good in the end and there were other night creatures that were alongside him, but it would have been good to have seen his side of the story, rather than it just being treated like a bit on the side. His hands moving away from his eyes truly showed that he was free, and he was no longer hiding due to the monster that he thought he was perceived to be. Overall, I would say that this season is definitely worth a watch. It's better than the first season, and the battle at the end, which climaxes with a visual and audible crescendo, leaves you wanting more. So hopefully we'll get a season 3. So, there you have it. Castlevania Nocturne Season 2 Ending Explained.